Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm so glad you could join us this evening for our presentation on sketching in nature with the Canadian Wildlife Federation and our special guest, Alan Lee. So I know there's a whole lot of you still joining in, but for those of you that are already here, it's kind of fun if you want to put in the chat where you're from. And remember, to find the chat, move your mouse around, and then the black bar should show itself, and then click to everyone. Otherwise, it only goes to the host and panelist, and then that's no fun. So I am Sarah Colber. I'm with the Canadian Wildlife Federation. I look after our Gardening for Wildlife program, and I am just west of Ottawa. Okay, great. Some people saying where they're from. Quebec, Ottawa, Kitchener, Canada,
Charlottetown.
Harry, Montreal. Ooh, look at that. Latrobe, PA. Trying to think where PA is. But
Wow,
hello,
great.
Deborah.
What a big
Yeah,
turnout.
I love seeing Charlottetown, Vancouver. Okay, this is great. This is when it's fun to see people from right across the country and even beyond. It's really, really fun. London, Ontario, Woodstock, Edmonton, Wasaga Beach. This is great. Oh, very cool. Halifax, Vancouver. Well, this is super. I'm so glad you guys are sharing where you're from. And if you want, you're welcome to say, if you're a beginner at this, because I am an absolute complete beginner when it comes to sketching. I've tried many times in my life and I've done it many times in my life, but I'm still an absolute complete utter beginner. So I'm really excited for tonight to learn a whole bunch of tips from Alan. So you're very welcome to share also where you're at with the sketching in nature. Hi, Laurie St. Clements, and gosh, people watch like BC, Ballard, Cochrane, Alberta. This is so wonderful.
Wow.
Thank you. Art is constant learning. Yes, it is. Thanks, Paulette. Very true. Cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go through a little bit of housekeeping because I think people are still joining, but for the most part, we've got a good number. So this is being recorded. So if you're tempted to take notes, that's fine, but you will get an email a few days after this event, as soon as I can get my act together to create the email, and as soon as the recording is available, and it'll have a link with the replay. So you can watch this again at your own pace, at your own leisure later on. So no worry about notes. And if you have a question, please can you put them all in the Q&A area? You'll see next to the chat or on the same black bar as the chat, there's a Q&A. That's where we love the questions. So at the end of the presentation, I can just go there and just read all the questions in one spot to Alan to go through. Okay, and then so more people are signing on. So just to say hi to everybody, if you want to say where you're from, that's great in the chat. If you can make sure you put it to everyone, then we all get to see. And let's see, I just let everyone know that it's being recorded and put the questions in the Q&A, please. And oh, Beaconsfield, Quebec. I grew up in Beaconsfield, Quebec. Coburg, hello. Well, Lethbridge. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on now. As mentioned before, I am Sarah Colber with the Canadian Wildlife Federation's Gardening for Wildlife program. And the Canadian Wildlife Federation, CWF for short, is a national charitable organization that has been working to support our wildlife and wild spaces for over 60 years now. And I'd like to acknowledge that I'm on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, and that I respect the inherent and treaty rights of all Indigenous peoples across this land. And I always think it's a neat time with our program and my program, because the Indigenous people are known to have been wise stewards of the land, taking only what they need, respecting nature, appreciating nature, working with nature. And that's what the Gardening for Wildlife program is all about. So wherever corner, patch of Canada we are calling home, we're just doing our best to work with nature, to support it and enjoy it. And so about tonight's presentation, I'm really, really happy that you're here to join us for the Sketching in Nature presentation with Alan Lee. And before I just give an introduction to Alan, I want to say it's kind of cool because normally our webinars are about wildlife-friendly gardening features and practices and native plants and the animals that might come and live in or visit our gardens. But I'm really pleased to offer this webinar where we can connect with nature in a different way. Some of us just like to maybe take the time to sit in our gardens, which I do, take pictures in our gardens, which I do, but also sketching is a really neat way to refine our observation skills, to slow down, embrace some creativity, and engage the right brain, and also discover more about the plants we look at every day or the animals that are in the garden. It's a really neat way, I find, to connect with nature and learn, even especially if you're creating like a nature journal. So whether you're in your garden or in a park or in a nature trail, this is a skill I hope that you can all enjoy and use. So about Alan, Alan uses pencils, ink, and paint to document the wonders of the natural world. His mission is to build connections to nature through arts-based education. And since 2015, he's been partnering with nonprofit or environmental organizations to teach nature-focused art programs and workshops. Alan was responsible for the successful launch of the Bateman Foundation's Nature Sketch program in Toronto, teaching all of the art lessons during its inaugural year. And while the Bateman Foundation closed its doors in 2023, the Nature Sketch program will live on as one of the Canadian Wildlife Federation's newly acquired nature-based education programs. And it's actually an aside, a complete coincidence that we've done that at this time while we have Alan on, but it's a lovely connection. In 2019, Alan was also a speaker at the annual Ravine Symposium at the Toronto Botanical Garden and continues to teach a variety of classes in the Toronto area. In fact, that's where I first learned of Alan's art. Some wonderful lady named Colleen introduced me to Alan's art, and I was just fell in love with the beautiful sketches, and I'm so glad to have Alan here. And Alan, it's time for me to stop talking and stop sharing my screen, and I will hand it over to you now.
And I
So
will do the screen sharing. Okay, so I screen share. And here we go. All right. Are you good? Can you see all that?
Perfect. Yes, thanks. I'm going to mute myself now. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sarah, for inviting me to be a part of this webinar series. And I'm really happy to be here tonight. And thank you to everybody who is listening in. Over the next hour, we're going to cover a lot of ground. And so I've broken up the talk into 3 parts. So in part 1, I'm going to show you examples of what nature sketching looks like and give you some insights into the sketching process. Part 2 will be a chat about art materials and all the things you need to get started. And in part 3, I'm going to walk through 3 common subjects and explain how to sketch them using a step-by-step approach. So you ready? We're just going to dive into this. Okay, so what exactly is nature sketching? In a nutshell, nature sketching is your records of your observations of the natural world made on location. So this is an example from one of my sketchbooks. It's called Cup Plant, and I found it growing on the edge of a wetland. And so what you can see that I've done is I've sketched different parts of the plant in isolation. I've added some color, a little bit color here and there, and I've added written notes. So when you're out sketching in nature, there is no right or wrong subjects. What I usually tell people is to let their curiosity lead the way and just see where it takes them. Birds are super popular for sketching, and we have a lot of great choices that we can choose from. Besides mourning doves and robins, I would suggest if you want to try sketching birds that you start with something like a Canada goose. So with geese, they're large, and when they're on land feeding, they move slowly. So you can sketch them with the naked eye. So you don't require anything like binoculars or scopes. They're quite approachable. As long as they don't have goslings with them, you don't ever want to be crowding them once they have the little ones with them. And in part 3 of tonight's talk, I'm going to walk you through how to sketch a goose. Like geese, swans make fantastic subjects to sketch. This swan here was on the edge of a pond, preening its feathers. And when you see the sketches I've been just posting, you might have noticed that they're not packed with detail. And that's because birds are constantly on the move. So when I'm out sketching them, I'm not going for detail. What I'm trying to do is capture their actions and their gestures. With smaller birds, I will sketch them from a distance with a spotting scope so that I don't spook them away. If you don't have a scope, Bird feeders, they make, they're like a great substitute. And if you don't have a backyard where you can set up a feeder, many larger parks will often have feeding stations set up over the winter, and you get a nice good view of the birds because there's no foliage obscuring them. The only drawback, of course, is that it is cold, and sketching with gloves on is a little bit tricky. And this is just one more sketch of gestures, bird gestures. Trees are probably the best subject you could explore in your sketchbook. First of all, they don't move, so that's great. And yet, over time, they change their appearance, especially deciduous trees. And when you're out sketching and looking for trees, you want to pay particular attention to the older trees. They often have gnarled limbs and twisted roots. That gives them a lot of character. And when you're looking for subjects to draw, you want to look for character because it's just more fun. And besides obvious places like parks, and arboretums, and botanical gardens, don't discount cemeteries. Cemeteries are a great place to sketch. In the summer months, they're not overrun with people, and many times the trees there are very long-lived. We don't want to forget decaying trees either. Many people on a walk through the woods, they're not going to be paying much attention to stumps or logs, but I feel they're just as compelling to sketch as their living counterparts. And because they're close to the ground, you can get quite close to them, so you're not craning your neck upwards. In this sketch here, I was initially attracted to the tree roots, but decided to instead focus my attention on this little, the antics of this little chipmunk that came over to see what I was doing. And so this is a good example of just keeping an open mind when you're out sketching and just adapting to any unexpected circumstances. Because in nature, there's constantly unexpected things that you're going to encounter. When you're sketching in nature, the small subjects like fungus and toads, they matter as much as the larger ones. So it's a good idea to try to pay attention to the world at your feet. And when you're doing that, you want to actually physically get closer to the ground because it gives you a fresh perspective, and it helps you see details that you might otherwise miss. I once had a student, she asked me, where do you begin with plants? There's so many plants. How do I start sketching them? And my suggestion to her was to start with one plant. Start with one and become an expert of that plant by chronicling its life cycle from the early stages when it's growing to when it flowers and finally until the time it withers, and make note of things like insects or birds that require that plant for survival. And this sketch here is my own ongoing efforts to learn about common milkweed. Often when I'm out sketching, I will try to make sketches where my subjects are life size. So this is like the actual size that they appeared in front of me. And that's because you never know when your sketches might become useful reference material if you're working on a drawing or a painting. And later on in tonight, in part 3 of our discussion, I'm going to explain more about how to make life-size sketches. These lovely folks here, they were all students who took part in a 4-week field sketching course last summer. And coming into the course, some of them had previous experience with drawing and painting, while others had none. And to be honest, it didn't matter because when we're talking about sketching in nature, it's for everybody, regardless of your age, your ability, your cultural background. And as much as I would love to show you all the sketches they made on this final night of the class, we would probably need another hour or so. So instead, I'm going to share the work of 3 of the students so you can have a better idea of what it's like when you get a better idea of what different people, how different people approach working on location. So this person here, she is a university student and she's studying environmental science with a focus on biology. She's also a fan of botany, and she loves that how field sketching from life helps give her new insights into plants. And she also likes that sketching allows her to sort of cut through all the noise and focus in on the most important aspects of her subject. Let's just take a closer look here at her well-observed pencil sketch. And what I really like is how she's taken a small patch of land, like a little 12-inch by 12-inch square foot patch of habitat. It's literally small enough to fit in your lap. And you can see there, it's teeming with plant life. And what she's done is an excellent job in distinguishing the many individual species that are within this tiny clump of habitat. And while she was sketching plants, we have another artist who was compelled to sketch this marvelous tree. And this person, she does have an art history, an art studies background, but for her, it was the desire to learn about nature more, and she wanted to also pick up some tips on how to set up a nature journal. Those were her motivations for signing up for this course. And let's just take a closer look here at her superb sketch of that tree. It's marvelous. And she made it entirely using a ballpoint pen. So she didn't do any pencil drawing first and ink over it. She just went straight ahead to ballpoint pen. And I really like how she's conveyed the texture of the bark. In the previous class, we actually discussed the importance of touch. So engaging your senses when you're out in nature, touching your subjects, and in this case, feeling the texture of the bark, feeling how smooth it is, how rough it is, and that can help you when you're trying to convey these things on the page. And that sense of texture, it sometimes is missing whenever I see drawings that people have made by copying a photograph, because photos are flat. So you don't really have any physical connection to it. Here's another person. Here's our final person I'm going to profile. She had no drawing experience coming into the class, but as that Tilly hat and mosquito jacket suggest, she is someone who likes being outdoors. And her reasons for signing up for sketching lessons was that she wanted to incorporate sketching into her travels and record all the things she sees when she's out roaming the world. And speaking of travel, she's also the only person I've ever met who's visited every national park in Canada. And she also wrote a book about those trips. Here's her book. And here is a closer look at that sketch. So after just 4 weeks, she was beaming with pride over this sketch, and deservedly so. What I really like is that she's drawn this tree as it is, and that appeared, as it appeared in that moment of time. She didn't edit out any of the messy, broken bits of the trunk. She was true to her subject, and I try to encourage people to be the same way when they're sketching. Be true to your subject. Nature is sometimes messy, and that's okay. And a decaying tree like this is it's beautiful just as it is. My last example of what nature sketching looks like comes from Canadian artist Robert Bateman. Those of you who know about Bateman and his work, you're probably picturing scenes of wildlife with wolves and elephants, lions. But he's also a lifelong sketcher, and many people don't get to see his sketches. He sent me this lovely card and was nice enough to include this ballpoint pen sketch of a crow. And I like showing this sketch to students because it is a great example of the kind of fleeting impressions we're trying to capture when we're out in nature. So as you can see, he has his own line of sketchbooks. And as I just said, he uses a run-of-the-mill Bic ballpoint pen, like a black Bic. And sometimes he'll add a little watercolor paint on top of his sketches. But very often, the black pen is enough. So I hope that these examples help paint a better picture of what nature sketching is all about. We're going to shift gears now and move into part 2 of tonight's talk. First up, we need to discuss sketchbooks. So if you're a beginner, what I suggest is that you pick up something like a sketchbook that's small and cheap. So if it's cheap, you're not going to worry about ruining it or wasting pages. And you also want something small because after a short while, you're going to realize that that big heavy sketchbook is a burden to carry around, and it often just ends up gathering dust on the shelf later on. So for me, I will grab that small 5x7 Bateman sketchbook when I'm going on a hike and need to keep myself light. But for those times when I'm going to be spending more time on location, I'll opt for something a little bit larger. And that mixed media sketchbook is that's my go-to sketchbook right now. It has thick paper, so when I add paint to it, it doesn't warp or get all mushy. Next up, we have the Humble pencil. I suggest for beginners that you start with an HB pencil. It is a medium grade of pencil, so it's not too dark, it's not too light. It's just right in the sweet spot. And these are the type of marks you can get from just playing around with the pencil. By using it on its side, you can get these wider strokes and cover larger areas. And then when you need more detail, you just revert back to the tip. For anybody who's shopping in an art store, you're going to have a wider range of pencils to choose from. And with these artist grade pencils, they come in a wider selection. So you can buy pencils that either produce a lighter line or a darker line than the regular HB pencil. That gives you more creative options. But there's one thing you realize with pencils: there's no uniform industry-wide uniform grading scale. So if you buy an HB pencil from one brand, it won't necessarily feel the same as an HB pencil from another brand. So if you're able to shop in person and bring your sketchbook with you, so you can like scribble down and you can test it out before you buy it, because not all pencils feel the same, and you're probably not going to like some, and you will probably find others that you will like. So once you've done a lot of sketching, you're going to end up with a bunch of little stubby pencils like this. Don't toss them out. You can get a lot more mileage out of these pencils simply by using a pencil extender. That's my pencil extender. I bought that when I was an art student more than 25 years ago. And those things cost about $10. But if you want to save $10, you can make your own extender by reusing something that normally gets thrown away. So later on, after this webinar, rummage around through your medicine cabinet and see if you can find one of these Bic disposable razors. What you want to do is you grab a pair of pliers and you can just grab that head of the razor, snap it back, snap it off. And it's the handle that you want to keep, that orange handle. Because look at this. Look at that. A standard pencil slides perfectly, and it fits really snug in there. So you have yourself a pencil extender, and you save yourself $10. And but wait, there is a bit more. If you take the pointy end of that pencil and shove it into the handle, now you're protecting that sharp tip from breaking when you're out traveling. And you're also protecting yourself from getting accidentally poked by that pencil. Something I've done many times when I've reached into my bag quickly. I've stabbed myself so many times. And should you be drawing with a green pencil and you drop that on the forest floor, and the sun is setting and it's getting dark, there's no way you're going to find that pencil again. But if it's attached to that bic, you have a much better chance of not losing your pencils. So all this talk of pencils and stumps and extenders is too much. You can just go sketch with a generic mechanical pencil. This is like a Walmart or Staples pencil. Back to school time, you can get them by the case, a little box of them. They're fine. They're great. And with mechanical pencils, you don't have to worry about carrying a sharpener. Let's have a quick chat about pen and ink, because this is a medium that many people like working with. So at the top, you have a Bic ballpoint pen, the same type that Robert Bateman loves to use. And below that is a fine liner pen. They come in many different sizes. They have fine nibs and broad nibs. And below that is a Japanese calligraphy brush pen. They only have one nib, but you can get a variety of lines just by using more pressure. So all of them, they are all suitable for nature sketching. And here are some of the different lines and what they look like in action. You can see that the fine liner and the brush pen make nice, strong, contrasty lines because the ink is very dense, it's really dark. And the ballpoint is much subtler. It's actually closer to a pencil. You can use less pressure and you can get these really subtle, almost pencil-like shading with it. So it's a nice transitional medium. And you can mix all of them up. You don't have to use one. You can try different different pens together. But if you're going to be doing pen and ink work, I suggest you work with a paper that is smooth. Pen and ink loves smooth paper. And when it comes to fine liners, just a couple more tips. Like I said, they come in many different sizes. You can get micro, if you need micro small drawings, you can buy a very, very fine liner pen. But the sweet spot for us when we're out sketching tends to be between 0.3 millimeters and 0.5 millimeters. You can get nice detail with pens in that range. And also you can get a fairly decent expressive line with it. And if you really like these pens, I'm just gonna use my mouse here. This silver one here at the bottom, that is, to my knowledge, the only refillable fine liner pen that is on the market. So you can buy cartridge refills that slide in the end. And when that fiber tip, if it eventually will wear down, you can also replace the tip. So all these other ones here, they are disposable pens. You can get a lot of years and a lot of many months of service out of them if you remember to keep the cap on. But if you are really into these pens, there's at least one refillable and more eco-friendly option. And here's an example of those pens in action. The ink in fine liner pens is archival and it dries really quick. It won't fade. It's really good ink. And for me, that was important because I wanted to get this sketch done quickly. And I quickly was able to apply watercolor on top of my sketch afterwards. And the reason why I needed to get this done quick was I was in the woods and I forgot my bug spray, and the mosquitoes were they were feasting on me. So I wanted to really get out of there quick. When it comes to wildlife, those Japanese brush pens are fantastic. In these sketches here of a barn swallow, there was actually several barn swallows. They were preening, and that's a beautiful fluid bird. And so the brush pen is a great tool for that because it's designed for fluid calligraphy lines. I'm gonna wrap up our chat about color here, wrap up our chat about materials with a little chat about color. So if you're out sketching in the woods and all you have with you is a pencil or a pen, you're gonna have to add written notes to your sketches to help you remember the colors. So when you do that, you want to be very specific. You don't just want to say, that leaf was green, because a few months from now, when you're looking through your sketchbook, you're not going to remember the exact hue of that leaf. So you want to say something like, that leaf was Kermit the Frog green. Very specific. Or you can try associating colors with food. You could say something like, instead of saying something like that flower was yellow, You could say that flower was lemon yellow, or that flower was mustard yellow. So be very specific, and it'll help you later on when you're trying to figure out or recall the colors that you saw in nature. Another way you can approach color is with color pencils. You don't have to color everything in your sketch, and sometimes partly coloring your sketch is enough. And so with color pencils, they make extensive sets, and you don't have to buy every color that they make. But if you're just starting out, I suggest getting a basic, a 12-pack starter set. And once you become more familiar with the type of subjects you like to sketch and draw, you can augment that. You can buy individual pencils and build up your own collection. So there are many different brands available. These are all ones you can get in the store right now, except for that one at the bottom of the screen. That is a vintage Laurentian pencil. I'm on the cusp of 50 years old, and I remember these when I was a kid, and I'm sure some of you might remember them. If you can find them, hit the thrift stores. And they were made in the Toronto area, a long time ago, and unfortunately, the company was bought out, and the pencils, they were never quite the same. The American company that took them over, they changed the formula, and just if you happen to have a box of these pencils, they will fetch like for hundreds of dollars on like eBay and places like that. People pay like $300 for a pack of these vintage pencils. When it comes to adding color, I actually prefer using watercolor paint. And it's easy to mix up colors that I need on the fly instead of carrying around dozens and dozens of pencils with me, pencil crayons with me. So what you're seeing on the left-hand side of the screen, that is a small little candy mint tin. You don't have to spend a lot of money buying these things at the art store. They sell plastic palettes and such that you can buy. Some of them are up to $20. So just look around your house. You might be able to find a small little tin like this, and it's great because you can do what I do. I just squeeze little blobs of paint in my tin the night before I go out, and those blobs of paint will dry, and they reactivate very easily later on when I'm exposing them to a little bit of a wet brush. So get something small. I like using these little tins. They close up. I can slide them in my pocket, and they don't take up much room. When it comes to a brush, though, you might want to buy one of these. These are game changers for anyone who paints and sketches outdoors. These portable water brushes, they're unique because the water itself is stored within the handle of the brush. So you can see right here that when you need a bit of water to come out of the handle, you press the button and the water flows outwards, and everything is self-contained. It makes working outdoors much more convenient because now you don't have to carry a separate little cup for holding water, and it's not messy. These are game changers. If you can get one of these and find a small little container to store some paint, away you go. You don't need much more than that. And when you're thinking about paint, I tend to recommend to students, stick with 3 colors, a yellow, red, and blue when you start. When you walk into a well-stocked art store, you will have literally hundreds of colors staring back at you, like hundreds of tubes. And don't think for a second you have to buy them all. That's, I've known students who've, they've bought many tubes of paint over the years, and they have like 20 and 30 of them. No, you can get away with 3. And with these 3 colors that I recommend, you can get a diverse range of mixtures. So you're going to mix your own colors based on these 3. And what you're seeing on the screen here is their, the name of the pigments. This under here, that is called the color index name. That will be on a label somewhere on the paint. And this is their name that appears on the label. But sometimes, like this word here, quinacridone rose, it's a mouthful. So the paint companies, they might change the name of the paint. So in this case here, it's called Red Rose Deep. That's much easier to pronounce than quinacridone rose. So it can be a little bit tricky when you're shopping. So look for this color index name that is going to accompany all of the different paints you buy. Okay, that's an easier way to help you understand what's inside that tube. And look at that. Here are some of the various mixtures you can get just by using 3 colors, just 3. So you don't have to buy purple. You can just mix your own with ultramarine blue and the rose. They make beautiful purples. And you see some other colors like ochres, siennas, umbers. You can get all sorts of rich, cool grays, warm grays, and a variety of greens. Everything that you need. And you don't need to spend a lot of money or break the bank when you're doing all this. Okay, we're going to shift gears again, and we're going to move into part 3 of tonight's talk. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down 3 common subjects, and I'm going to do so in a beginner-friendly way. So I know there's a lot of beginners out there who are terrified of the blank page. Maybe it's you're just it's holding you back. Basically, it's a roadblock to you trying sketching. And I know it's frustrating for many people. So this first example I have, this is for you. So for all you out there, all of you people out there who the only draw stick people, this is for you. So let's imagine for a moment we're out in the woods and we find a leaf on the ground and you want to sketch it. So what do you do? So step 1, take that leaf and put it on the page. Okay. Step 2, take your pencil and trace the outline of that leaf. Okay. Step 3, put down your pencil, take a breath, and you got something on the page. That is what matters. There is no need to be embarrassed that you started by tracing. In the future, later on, once you have some more experience, you can try freehand drawing the leaf. But for now, when you're starting out and you're terrified of the page, the most important thing is to get something on the page, because once something is on the page, it's no longer blank. And if it's no longer blank, there's no more reason to feel afraid of it. So then you can just relax and you can just, enjoy sketching. And that's what, this is all about, enjoying sketching. So we've taken our leaf, we've traced the outline. This is a start. This is a start that we can build on. The next thing you want to do with your leaf, you want to just look at it and freehand sketch in the veins of the leaf. On some leaves, there are many veins, so you don't want to be sketching all of them, but sketch in the main ones and pay close attention to any holes or tattered edges around that leaf. And that's often a sign that a hungry caterpillar was munching on this leaf. It was a meal, and it's part of the story of this leaf. So we want to include these things. Okay, so now that we have the veins put in, it's looking pretty good. It's looking like a leaf, but we're still not done. We still have some more things we can do. Now that we have the outline, we have some veins put in. Now you can start to play. So what I've done here, I have gone over sections of the outline, and I've gone over them with my pencil a few times. And what you can see is that the lines become heavier and darker. And when you have a line that's heavy and dark like that, it starts to pop off the page. And the lines that I didn't touch, they sort of recede back into the background. So what you're doing now, you're creating a sense of depth to your drawing. So we have, it's feeling more dimensional. It's not so flat. We have a flat page that we're working on, but we can create this illusion that is, there's parts that are coming forward, there's parts that are sort of in the back. This is a good thing. This is a good thing. And when you're doing this is, making lines thicker, thinner. There's no right or wrong when it comes to a leaf. What you can do that's helpful is to think of it as like a piece of music, maybe like a song you hear over the radio, where it goes from high notes to low notes. It's not flat. It varies, right? The music will vary. It moves up and moves down. And that's what we want to do when we're drawing. When we're drawing with line, we want to keep our line variable. We want it to be expressive. We don't want it to be flat. A flat line is very handy when you're when you're assembling furniture from IKEA, those instructions, the lines are very, they're very even, they're very flat. That is great for when you're, putting something together. But we're artists here. We're going to be a little bit more expressive. Okay, so vary your line work, thick and thin, juicy lines. The last thing we want to do, it's looking good, but we need to add a layer or maybe one or two layers of pencil on top of our line sketch, so that it doesn't feel so empty. Now, with your pencil, you can use the broad side of the pencil, like I was talking about earlier, to cover wider areas or broader areas of your sketch. And then you switch back layer to the tip for those tiny little areas that you need more control. And once you've done that, you can keep adding pencil if you need to make it darker and such. But once you've done that, once it sort of it feels like that to me feels like it's done. And all you need to do is add the date. And if you could ID it, great. If not, there's many online resources later. It's part of the fun. I don't like actually using any sort of like phone apps when I'm out in the field. I actually like going like old school and going to the library and getting out field guides and trying to ID things. It feels kind of fun to me. So that's it. That's beginning to end a leaf. So if you're scared of the blank page, give this a try. I hope it helps. Let me show you next what to do when you can't take your subject and put it on the page and trace its outline. Okay, this is a little bit harder, but what you're going to do is this. This is staghorn sumac. It is this is the fruiting part of the tree. It's there all winter, and I'm not going to rip the fruit off the tree and put it on my page and trace its outline. I'm just not going to do that, and it's not a good thing to be ripping up plants and doing that. So, and we don't have to, because what you can do is you can take your hands and use them as a pair of adjustable calipers, and you can take measurements of your subjects. So what I want to do is I want to draw this staghorn sumac. I want to draw it life size. So I'm using my hands like a pair of calipers, and I'm measuring my length and my width of the subject. And so once I've got those measurements, I go back to my sketchbook page and I transfer those measurements to the page. And you can see on the right-hand side, those little tick marks, they represent the length and the width, but they also represent the boundaries. So these are the boundaries. So I know that if I make my sketch and it goes beyond those boundaries, it's no longer going to be life size. So I need to work within those boundaries. And so when I'm doing that, and I know I have to stick within those boundaries, I rough out a basic shape for my subject. Very, very basic. This looks like I don't know, a large teardrop. So this is all about just getting the basics in first, this foundation you want to build on. And once you have the foundation, in this case, I was constantly looking at my subject, and I started working up the detail. You can see it's very loose and scribbly at this stage. The amount of detail you add to your sketch, that is totally up to you. I find that if I'm with somebody and they're growing a little impatient that I'm taking too long when I'm sketching, I'll hurry it up. But if you have a bit more time, you can add some of the finer details in at a more leisurely pace. So once I've done that, I've roughly penciled in some detail. What I ended up doing was adding some ink on top of my pencil and erasing away all those distracting tick marks and lines. And so it's a very clean sketch at the end. It won't smudge or anything. And so when you're sketching life size, here's the thing that makes it great. You can hold up your sketch next to your subject, like I'm doing here in the photo, and you can make comparisons. You can compare directly your sketch with your subject, and it becomes quite obvious when something is not working. It's going to really jump out at you. And conversely, when things are working, it also is also really helpful. When you're sketching a subject for a long time, you can also flip your sketchbook upside down so you see it with fresh eyes, and that also helps you to spot things that are not quite accurate. So I hope that's helpful. I know it's a step up from the, tracing the leaf, but when you're out there in the spring and you're sketching plants, for example, try this method of taking measurements with your hands. You could of course use a ruler, but I don't carry a ruler because it's just, it's just one more thing to carry and lose. So, and my hands are with me all the time, so I use them. Give it a try. Hopefully that helps. My final example, my final sort of how-to tutorial of the night is wildlife. And what I was talking about earlier about Canada geese being superb subjects. They're fantastic. When you're sketching geese, however, you don't want to fall in the trap of being distracted by details like feather patterns, or if this was you just don't want to be distracted by details. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. It can get overwhelming. So when you're sketching wildlife like geese, if this is just your first time especially, you want to start by focusing in on the large shapes. So from left to right here, I just want to walk you through the process of this. So when I'm sketching a goose, their bodies, their bodies are large. So I usually start with their bodies, and I represent their bodies by sketching in a large oval or an egg shape to, get the mass of their body in correctly. And then I'll add his head. I'll add another smaller oval to represent his head. And with certain birds, they have long necks like geese. Most, other birds you'll encounter, their heads will be so close to their bodies you won't see any neck. So in this case, if you're sketching a goose, you don't want to be, walking up to it and using your hands like a pair of calipers and taking measurements. They're probably not going to appreciate that. So what you need to do is you need to estimate. Use your eyes. Start trusting your eyes here. You need to estimate the distance between the head and the body. And the first few times it's a bit tricky, but the more you practice this, the more it becomes more intuitive. So when you get that head and that body in the approximate place, you want to connect them. And that connection, you can see in the middle sketch there, that connection, that is the foundation of your sketch. That is what you want to build on. You don't want to start with details. You want to get that foundation, and then you can add on those details like you see in the third sketch on the right, where I've added the bill or legs and indicated the tail and wing feathers. You don't want to start with the details first. Like if I was to start with the bill and then draw the head and then the neck, chances are by the time I got down to its feet, it would be sort of misshapen and lumpy, and proportions would be off. You want to get that big body shape established first. Okay. So getting back to the field, when I was out there with the geese, this was it. Literally the first few lines on the page. 2 eggs, 2 ovals. That's what I put down. And in the mere minutes it took for getting down those ovals and connecting them, those geese, they had enough of me. They were doing their thing. They left, and it turns out I was actually done too, because what you can't see in the sketch was that it was freezing cold. There was this really cold wind blowing across the field, and the ink in my pen, it literally dried out the ink. It froze the ink in my pen. So I was able though to manage and use my little water brush that was in my pocket and add a few splashes of color. But that was it. It literally mere minutes, and you can see here, you can still see the big oval shape, right? It's still, even though I put some indications of legs and wing feathers, the foundation of it is that big oval and the smaller one up here, and connecting them. That is the key. So admittedly, this is not the best time of year to go out sketching geese. They're all in their nests right now, and soon afterwards they're going to have little goslings with them. So what you might want to do is hold off on practicing the geese until the summer months, when the young have grown and the grass is lush and they're more relaxed and they're not bothered by your presence. You can just literally fill sketchbook pages just by hanging out with geese. And that practice, that will prepare you for when you're drawing smaller birds. The same principles apply. You can see, in many of these sketches, if you're starting out, especially, try to start with profile views, where the bird is very clean in profile. If you're a beginner, profile views are the way to go. And later on, you can try views where they're from different angles, but start with a profile so you can see that large egg-shaped body. And hopefully that will be of help to you. That actually concludes the part 3 of tonight's talk, where I went into sort of how-to things that you can do. I do want to leave you with one parting suggestion, parting tip, and that is to try to make sketching part of your daily life. Don't just reserve it for those times when you're heading out to some remote wilderness. You want to make it part of your daily life. And if you're, for example, you work in an office, instead of eating in the corporate lunchroom, head outside, go sit on a bench, sketch the pigeons, sketch the ring-billed gulls. I know they're not as exciting as bald eagles, but it's not about that. It's about keeping those creative juices flowing. You want to keep that creative energy going. And that's because sketching and drawing and painting and many creative things, it's like a muscle. And with sketching, you want to exercise that muscle as much as you can, because if you're exercising it, it will grow, it will become strong. And what happens to a muscle that you don't exercise? It withers away, so it atrophies. And so even in the most mundane parts of our lives, you can squeeze in a few minutes here, a few minutes there. The sketch you're just looking at on your screen there, I mean, I was just out going for groceries, and small little pockets. It's better to sketch 5 minutes a day than holding off until your weekend and spending an hour. Just get in a few minutes each day, and you'll find that over time 5 minutes will become 10 minutes, and 10 minutes will become longer. And that is my parting tip for you. That is probably the best piece of advice I can leave with you. Make sketching part of your daily life. We have a couple of wonderful artists here. They are students from the Toronto area who have taken printmaking classes with me and sketching classes with me. And if you live in the Toronto area and want to check out a live class, I teach at these 3 locations over here. And not just sketching, but there's other things, drawing, painting, etc. Check out the websites of these organizations. They have their classes posted all the time. I do want to warn you though, the classes in Toronto, they sell out really fast. So they just get snapped up. So you have to be quick. And if the idea of sitting in a patch of milkweed sounds like fun, have a look into it, and invite your friends. This is a mother and son duo, mother and son team who have teamed up over the years to take art classes together. And it's just a wonderful way to spend time hanging out with people that love nature and love sketching. I keep the classes capped at 12 people, so there's plenty of time for some one-on-one and nice little friendly group critiques afterwards. It's always good. And before we go to the Q&A portion of the night, if you think of something later on and you want to ask me a question, that's my email you see on the screen. I will do my best to try to answer any sketching questions that you might have. And if you're interested, I do have a website. And besides my own personal drawings and paintings, I love to post the work of my students on my blog page. You can have a look through there, see some past student work. And there is also a page on my website called Learn. And on that Learn page, I have written a number of articles over the year that you're welcome to check out and hopefully, take away some value. Hopefully they're helpful. I think they are, but you never know. Sarah, that's a wrap for me on this end. I'm going to throw it back to you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Alan.
Yeah, let me try to answer some questions if you got any.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So everybody, I saw a couple of questions in the chat, so I'll start with those. But please, if you could put any questions you have in the Q&A, then it's all in one spot, so I can just go to that one spot. But I just want to say quickly, Alan, thank you so much. I was expecting certain kinds of tips, but you had all kinds of really cool, surprising tips. And I know people in the comments were saying like, "Hey, that's great, DIY."
Everyone's looking for those big razors.
Yeah. Well, they're eco-friendly, they're affordable, they're plus you had all kinds of tips, which
you can reuse a lot. Yeah, I like to make things for my students in classes, because a lot of times when you buy things at the art store, they're so overpriced. And
Mm.
oftentimes I can just make it with this like common stuff. If you ever take a class with me, you'll see I can fabricate things from the dollar store to save you money. So I'm happy to share tips like that.
Thanks. Yeah. And a lot of appreciation. You've inspired a lot of people and I am inspired. I'm going to try and sketch every day. I will try. We'll see how long it
Watch
lasts, but I
those
will try.
pigeons.
Okay, so starting with these questions, someone asked about the eraser you might recommend for no smears. Do you have a
Oh, good question. That's a good one. Kneadable erasers, gray putty erasers are good for just dabbing on if you're lightening up a pencil line like this feather I was drawing. I like to use kneadable erasers. Sometimes though, hard white erasers are also good. If you're someone who's doing any detailed botanical drawings, there are these sort of pen looking erasers. I don't have one here. I wish I did, but it is the Tombow Mono Zero eraser, I think it's called, and it's like it sort of looks like this mechanical pencil here, but it is an eraser that you can click on it, and it gives you a lot of control. But for the
okay?
most part, kneadable erasers, a gray kneadable eraser, a putty rubber, they work wonders. I use them and they don't smudge. Yep.
Thank you. Then the next question is, do you have a recommendation for a pencil sharpener?
Oh yes, yes. There is one. It is it's called an automatic long point sharpener, and it's made by a company called KUM, like Cum, I think it's called. I don't know. It's German. And if you're in Ontario or Quebec, you can buy them at Desserts, the store Desserts. They're like
Mm-hmm.
$5.99 at Desserts, I think. And I do recommend those sharpeners to my students. And just buy it local. It's cheaper actually. One of my students, she thought it'd be cheaper going through Amazon, and so she ordered through Amazon. It ended up costing her over $20 for that same eraser, or sorry, same sharpener that you can get for $6 at the local shop. And so she paid over $20, and literally the shop was down the street from where she lived, so she could actually just
Mm.
walk there and saved herself a ton of cash. And those sharpeners,
Mm.
there's two holes. One is for sharpening the wood of the pencil, and the second hole, once you sharpen the wood, you insert it into the second hole and you sharpen the actual graphite lead. So they make a
Okay.
nice sharp point. If you're on a budget, there's actually one at Dollarama. It's their studio pencil sharpener. It's like $1.25. You can get really sharp pencils with that when they're new. After you use them for a while, the blade actually, it gets kind of dull pretty fast. But there's this one that's called the Studio. It's like red, blue, I think black, but they're like $1.25. And I've used those in a pinch when I've been out with students and I needed, a sharpener. But if you can grab that $6 one from Desserts, it's like KUM. That's the name of the company. They're made in Germany and they have little replaceable blades that come with
Mm.
it. Get a lot out of those.
That's smart. That's smart. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And so now I'm going to go to the Q&A.
Okay.
Um, so Susan's asking, do you do finished work that you sell?
Do I do finished work that I sell? Yes
Hmm.
and no. Yes and no. Before when I was just starting out in my career, when you're starting out, you almost like want this validation that I sold a piece of work, and it makes you feel good, like people are they see some value in your work. But over time, as I gotten older, I want to get some of those drawings back. I have friends that have my drawings. I want them back. I love them so much. It's actually painful sometimes with parting with something. And these days, I'll sometimes take on commissions, and sometimes I like to. For example, I got an art show gala coming up, and I'm happy to donate things. Like I just painted a little painting of a leaf that's going to be coming up at the Visual Arts Mississauga, their gala. So I donated that. But you know what? When it comes to art, I'm going to be selling more lino cut prints. I've really gotten that into the printmaking in the past few years,
Making. Mm.
and I'll be selling more of those. And I like donating things, so gives some eco groups gives them a hand when they're trying to raise funds. So hopefully that answers that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. And then Kaylee's asking, do you have any tips for getting children excited about sketching?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
It usually,
I will say you've
yeah.
got a lot of us excited about sketching. The comments coming in are like, you're inspiring us, you're giving us the confidence. So you've done a great job with us adults, but any for kids.
Well, when I was working with Robert Bateman in his with his sketching program, I did actually teach the young kids. So I had the junior nature sketch kids from ages 5 to 12. So I did work with young kids a lot, And the most important thing is to, sketch with them. Just just get in there with them, and don't hold back. Don't like hang around the sidelines and like act like an adult. You got to get on the floor, get on the ground with them. If you see a bug, like I'm like right in there with them, holding up the bugs, and just get in there, just be a part of it, so it becomes something they can relax and enjoy. And encourage, just be encouraging with your comments. If you, instead of saying, oh well, that could be fixed, that's not technically right, like don't ever say that stuff. Just encourage them. Hey, maybe that looks really good, but maybe you can try looking at it from this way, and you start making subtle things, right? You don't want to be when I was an art student, we had some really mean teachers, and you never want to be mean. And because what happens is that those kids, if you make a sort of an unpleasant comment, those things will stick with them for years and years. And because I teach a lot of seniors, a lot of people who have they remember those moments when some teacher or an adult said something mean to them, and it's caused them to put aside their art for like decades. And it's really sad. So you want to just be encouraging. Okay, just be encouraging. My oldest student ever, she was 86 years old before she decided, I'm going to go for it. I'm not waiting anymore. I'm going to go for it at 86 years old. And she showed up for some classes, and she brought her two daughters with her to keep her company. And her two daughters, they were retired. They were like in their 60s. So, they sort of waited, a while, but if you're going to be working with kids, just be in the moment with them, enjoy it with them.
Those are great thoughts. Thank you. And someone's asking, any tips to drawing waterfalls?
Ooh, waterfalls. You know what I would do? And I wish I could, show you this. I would actually sketch the overall shape of the waterfall, and I would blend some graphite over it. So you have this sort of gray layer of graphite. And then I would take a sharp eraser and use the eraser to pull out highlights of the streaking water as it heads downwards. It would take me like seconds to show you this. I show my students how to do these things in person, but I'm just like, I'm holding up my hands trying to describe it. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, whoever asked that wonderful question. But just adding, once you've established the shape of the waterfall, try blending in some graphite so it's nice and smooth, and then take a clean eraser, try using that for the, that sort of suggests the movement of the water, the white streaks. So just try that. That's all I can offer. Like, I got nothing here. I could show you this if I had some, if you were in front of me, but I'm just staring at a microphone. I got nothing. So
yeah, that's good though. Thank you.
Okay.
One quick question. When you say graphite, I don't know if you touched on that in the talks. So okay, great.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, pencil, graphite pencils. Graphite is a mixture of clay with graphite with my mind. Sorry, my mind is sort of drifting, but it's when we call lead pencils, there's no lead in it. It's just an old term, but it's graphite. So
it's not a specific kind of shape or heaviness.
No.
Okay.
This person who's wants to do something with the waterfall, she might go with a softer pencil. So when you see a pencil like the one I recommended, the HB, darker pencils, they will go up in value. So it would be like B, 2B, 3B, 4B. It gets darker as it progresses. And then going on the opposite end of the scale, harder pencils, from HB to H to 2H to 3H, they get harder. So just understand that, you can get some really, really dark pencils that will smudge very effectively, much more than the standard HB pencil.
Okay, thank you. There is one last question. Someone's asked your thoughts about charcoal. It's quick, but it smears so fast.
Yes, I love charcoal, and I don't have any charcoal drawings on my website, but I used to use that extensively. Charcoal pencils, to be more precise. Faber-Castell charcoal pencils, the natural charcoal pencils. So the question was, what are my thoughts on it? What are my thoughts? A great medium, I would, if you're not going far from home, if it's someplace in your backyard or your neighborhood, and you don't mind, and you can safely transport that drawing back home without it getting all smudged, great. You can try a couple things. There is a workable fixative that you can spray your drawing with so it doesn't smudge, or you can place a clean sheet of like paper on top of it to transport it. Hopefully that won't smudge it. But that fixative I just mentioned, when I was an art student, a lot of people would spray that stuff around, and it's really just sort of an acrylic mist. So it's like a layer of fine acrylic that will bond those particles to the paper. And you don't want to be breathing that stuff in. When I was in art school, people would be spraying that stuff everywhere and people would be walking through it. And I don't know. That's probably not good to be spraying aerosolized acrylic. So there is a natural fixative. I think it's made with casein. Casein. I don't know if that's the way I pronounce it. It's milk protein based, and that will also do the same thing. And it's like in a bottle, and you it's sort of like a hairspray pump, that type of thing. You can try that. That's a little less toxic than the aerosolized acrylic mist. But in terms of a medium, it is wonderful. It's probably not that suited for detail. So if you like working broadly, and it could be for you, right? If you are doing some detailed charcoal drawings, switch over to charcoal pencils. And I suggest trying the natural charcoal pencils as opposed to the others that are compressed charcoal. Compressed charcoal is made with carbon black pigment and it's very dense, whereas natural charcoal pencils are lighter. They're very much like the traditional sticks of charcoal you can buy.
Okay.
So hopefully that's
I
helpful.
didn't realize there was a difference. So
Oh, I'm
that's
such a
great.
nerd. There's so many nerdy things about art supplies. It's
But we
wonderful.
keep learning. This is so
Oh, it
great.
never ends. It never ends. When I was in art school, I thought the end, after 3 years, I knew everything, but turns out I knew nothing. And it's still like 30 years later, I'm still learning about new things and it's great. I
It's the
love,
way it is,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't see any more questions
Okay.
in the Q&A, but
If,
I want to
if,
thank actually all those that have participated. There's still so many of you on. Your enthusiasm and sharing
yeah,
with us, it really helps
great.
make it a wonderful evening. And I
And
appreciate you guys so much. And Alan, again, I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate
this was fun.
your down-to-earth tips and your
Mm,
clear way of expressing and your beautiful art and
thank you.
very inspiring. So thank you so much for
Thank
sharing
you.
your time with us this
And
evening.
and if anyone thinks of something later on, feel free to shoot me an email. Happy to answer questions. I get emails, random emails from people quite often. So if you have a specific question, shoot away. Okay.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
And I wish you guys all well, and you will get an email coming in a few days' time with the replay and any helpful links we can think of. And if ever you want to share your drawings, if you get inspired
Do
by
it.
this and you
Do
want to
it.
share, that
Share.
would be so fun. Like it would be fun. I don't know how we would share amongst ourselves, but if you want to send to me or Alan, oh my gosh, we'd love to see it.
Hey,
So just
if you
a
sketch
thought.
something and you learn, if okay, let me put this out there to, I don't know, 100, or how many people are listening? 100, 200?
There's 120 left, but they're going to
Okay.
watch the replay.
Okay, okay. So if there's
Yeah.
120 people out there and you sketch something, send it to me, and I'm gonna, make a note that it was, something you learned on this webinar or whatever, and you want to try. Send it to me. I will happily post these things on my blog page. Yeah, I would love to do that. So just make a
Great.
note and leave me your
And if
name.
you don't, and if you don't want it posted, you can just tell them just to keep it private
Oh
too.
yes,
So
yes, of course, of course. If you wanted to send it to me, if you're not ready for prime time, that's fine too. So, but I'm happy to
awesome.
see it. If you have any, you know what? And if you sketch something and you have a question about it, something specific, just shoot a photo of it and ask me a question. I'm happy to answer that.
Thank you. That's very generous of your time. So thank you. Great.
Okay.
Well, I will say goodnight to everybody and take care. Have a really great
Happy,
evening
happy
and
sketching.
sketching. Bye-bye.
Bye.